The King is generous. He has prepared good things. First of all, a wonderful world, and then, if we pass the test, bliss unending. He is on side, and we who have been given the privilege of having the fullness of truth and light are on the same side, but are also collaborating with him to see that as many as possible come with us to that good place. This, over the centuries, has been perceived for what it is, somewhat urgent. Are you aware of the degree of heroicity to which that led souls, even in this area? As it happens, in this very parish was born in 1829 a certain Joseph Rooney. He became the first student of the purposely founded missionary seminary of Dublin, All Hallows. He was the first to enroll there, and this led him to ordination in 1847 at the age of 24. He was sent immediately to India. Now remember, travelling at that time to India meant never coming back. It also meant possible martyrdom. And by the way, many died of virtual martyrdom. Often the first generation was sacrificed because they knew that they could not fight various illnesses to which they had no immune system and against which they had no medicine. So hundreds died in that first wave of natural causes without anything else. He was able to function, saving many souls, baptizing many pagans for 10 years. And then in 1857, there broke out nothing short of a massacre, the Corn Pole Massacre. This was to do with Indian factions amongst themselves. It was towards the end of the Modi Empire. However, he was caught in the midst, dragged from the confessional. He was actually hearing the confessions of a soldier, and brought to his own garden and there hanged. As it happens, it got known back home here in Ireland, and it was what inspired a whole movement to go over to these pagans and save their souls. It led to an outpouring of grace, much actually in this very diocese. And we have down the road one of the main centres of diffusion of light and grace, a massive structure, as you know, where the Columban missionaries were formed by the 100. Other movements were linked, and between here and nearby France, vast numbers of pagans were brought to the full light of the gospel as we know it, but not without a price. Talking one day to our French prior in Italy, he told me how when he was young, the challenge of the missions was huge. Why? It still could mean martyrdom. it was still heroic, and no coming back when he was a child. Actually, I shouldn't be telling you this, but our old bishop too, Bishop Smith I mean, had been fascinated by it as a child, but he opted to stay in this diocese. God had another project. And so it was that they went, but many ended up tortured. And if you go to that chapel, a beautiful chapel in the quad of Dalgan Park down the road, go to the back, look at the wall and read some of the inscriptions, because you have pictures, real photos, and under them a brief story. And you will find quite a few who were atrociously tortured. That's just down the road where they left for that, knowing what was ahead. It's not that long in time after both the martyrs over in England, including our own actually, Oliver Plunkett at Tyburn, 1681 the last, and also what happened in the North American continent. Jean de Brébeuf had 7 Jesuit companions who were very badly treated, as in the parable we've had now, refusal. Jean de Brébeuf, in the 1640s, was fastened to a stake and tortured to death. Isaac Jogues, he ministered to what we would call Red Indians, and he was put into slavery and atrocious torture. And to stop him from doing something they knew to be something special to him, they completely mangled his hands. They knew what they were doing. Miraculously, he was able to get out of the situation, mangled though he was, and to return to France, where he wrote to the Holy Father, pleading for a dispensation from canon law with regard to celebrating Holy Mass without physical integrity. Initially, I believe the reaction of the Holy Father was not to take it too seriously, but then something prodded him to ask the story behind this letter. And when he discovered, he immediately wrote from the bottom of his heart, conceding all the faculties he needed. Eventually, after weeks of waiting, because time was what it was in those days, he got the letter and he vested again the vestments of his youth, went up to the altar of God, intuibo ad altare Dei, adem quiletificat juventutem meam, the joy of his youth. And with the ecstasy of his first Holy Mass, he celebrated again with his mangled limbs as best he could, but with the same fervour as though it were his first celebration. But it didn't stop there. Moved by divine grace, he wanted to be a missionary to the end and not stay put in France, where there's plenty of grace. He wanted to bring light to the dark North American continent, and he crossed the long ocean again and got there. But he was caught. And this time he was tomahawked to death. My friends, when I was in Rome, living actually with missionaries in the American Missionary College of Mary Knoll, because you have to find a place to live as well as study in Knoll. I overheard many a conversation, and I overheard this conversation at table one time amongst themselves. We have lost the notion of mission. He, in saying this, was referring to the ones that had formed them and had gone there to die and to preach and to baptize at all costs. And now many were content to be a cultural presence, as though natural grace was sufficient and all we had to have was respect for what was there. Where, my friends, the light of grace comes, things follow. Where it is not there, other things either are there or come back in. When you fall into the hands of non-baptized races, you're treated as they treat anyone. Tendentially, but not always, tendentially, a place graced over the centuries by Christian prayer and sacraments is slightly different. Observe. Now, my friends, what is happening? Every time the gospel conquers a land, it's a huge victory and therefore battle against what's there already. Nations under the emprise of Satan without knowing it, and that satanic force will not relinquish. Huge backlashes. But when in a Christian land old Nick wants his own again, what will he do? He'll find a clever means to use what's in there, the weakening of the Catholics themselves, a polite language which places all on the same level, in such a way that the urgency will be taken away, and false theology will give the idea that natural grace is sufficient. It's not, my friends. When the Lord said and repeated, "No man can enter the kingdom of heaven unless he is born again," and he explained what he meant of water and the Spirit, baptism, then that means what it means. Why? Metaphysically, we are born under original sin in a bad place, orientated towards evil and not in the state of openness to the beatific vision. Fundamentally, we're in trouble when we're born, and that's what the missionaries knew. Only the light of grace places us in a secure place before death. Don't be fooled, my friends. Every soul before you is an immortal gem, and you could save that soul by saying the right word.